I think so. It's on. So whether there's sound or whatever it is, I don't know.
Yep, there's sound. Everything's great.
Morning, Zajac.
Morning. Morning. Good morning.
iPhone 7.
Dan Ram.
Romster. Morning.
Morning.
Zajac.
Be joining you in about 10 minutes.
All right. 6:49. We got one more minute. We'll start. We are doing Rambam for Sunday, the 18th of Tammuz, starting for Perek Daled, which I believe is the last Perek of Shekalim, and then starting the fun stuff. Thankfully, not my job. So, okay, 6:50 a.m. Oh, Avram Semach's here. Let's do it. Okay, Perek Daled, Halacha Aleph.
Good morning.
Good morning. Trumas Halishka Mayaseba. What did they do with the funds that were in this Trumas Halishka that we talked about yesterday, which was the room where they stored all these half shekels? So, so they purchased the animals that were used for the carbon tamid, there was a tamid shel shachar, tamid shel bein arbayim every day. So every day they had a goat or a lamb, I think, that was brought for the carbon tamid, right? One in the morning, one in the afternoon. And v'hamusafim, the carbon musaf that was brought on Shabbos, that was brought on Rosh HaChodesh. V'chol karbanos hatzibur v'niskeim, and then in general, all karbanos tzibur and their libations. So there was a pouring of wine that came along with the carbon, and that was also purchased from these shekalim. Also the salt that they salted all the carbonis with, the chen ha'etzim, and also the wood that was used as fuel to burn the carbonis on the mizbeach. Let's say someone just brought a carbon, they didn't bring also the wood to burn it with, which was not an obligation. So if there was not enough wood, they would buy the wood from these funds. And just regarding the salt, when you brought a carbon, part of the avodah that was done was that all the animals had to be salted. This is not something that you had to bring. It's not like, okay, here's my animal and here's my salt. So the Beis Hamikdash had to purchase lots of salt, and that used to come from these shekalim. And also the incense, which is called the ketores, and the cost that they had to pay for the experts that were in charge of creating the spice. They had to go to these expert spice makers in order to put together the secret recipe that was the ketores, and there was a cost for that. So these were experts that charged for their craft. Lechem apanim, also for the showbread. Lechem apanim, also the cost of making the lechem apanim, which a little confusing to me because I always thought just like the Kohanim in the Beis Hamikdash made the lechem apanim, but I guess there were some expert bakers maybe that consulted in how to properly make the bread. And actually, now that I remember, we learned in the Gemara. Ooh, I don't remember where we learned this. There was one family; they were the experts on making lechem apanim. They charged a lot of money for it, and so they decided, you know what? Forget you guys. We're not paying you anymore for the lechem. And they went and they tried to make it themselves. When they made it themselves without these guys, there was some of the character that didn't stick. I don't remember if it basically, after all that, they basically went back to the family with their tail between their legs, and that's actually what the Rambam was talking about. Sorry, now I remember it. Okay, and there was also a similar story with the ketores, where the family that knew how to make the keteris also charged a lot of money. So they said, we don't need you. So instead they went to these Egyptian spice makers, and it was something, maybe it didn't go up in the straight column the way the keteris was supposed to, or something like that. But then this in the Daf Yomi, in the Gemara. Anyhow, and sure enough, they had to go back to the family that made the spices and pay them the full their full fee. Okay, para aduma. So the red heifer, or Rabbi Zajac calls it the red heifer, the sor hamashtaleach, and also the goats that were sent out on Yom Kippur. The lashin shells zahiris shekoshim beim karnav. Also the red string that was tied between the horns of the sar hamashtaleach. All this kol elu boim mitrumas halishka came from the trumas halishka. Halacha beis. Aval parhalam davar shel tzibur. There was a carbon when the entire nation sinned by mistake due to some erroneous, I don't know. Let's just say they were told that they could wear shaitels, and they found out afterwards that it's from Indian hair and it was avodah zarah. Let's just say that was an example. So now the entire nation committed this sin. So they have to bring a carbon called a par helam davar. This par helam davar did not come from the lishkas from the lishka. Rather, it came from a separate fund. They collected money dafka for that, and it didn't come from the lishka. But chila gadin lahem the einam bam b'trumas halishka. It did not come from the trumas halishka. Usir avodah zarah. Also, if you did avodah zarah in Usir avodah zarah, also was when the whole community did avodah zarah, so they would bring this certain so'er, a certain carbon, and this also did not come from the trumas halishka. Paraychas shel hechon tachas binyan asuyos beinam ve'enon bo'in mitrumas halishka ella mikochi bedek habayis. In the second Beis Hamikdash, there was a wall. Let me back up. In the first Beis Hamikdash, there was a wall built between the Azara and the Kodesh HaKodashim. In the second Beis Hamikdash, when it was a much, much taller structure, they couldn't build a wall at that appropriate width that would be structurally sound, because it was 100 amas tall or something like that. So therefore, instead, they replaced it with two curtains, these massive curtains, and they were 1 amma apart from each other. Okay, but those curtains were considered structural to the Beis Hamikdash, and they did not come from the Trumas Halishka. Okay, so that would come from the funds that were set aside for the Bedek Habayis. Aval paroiches shel she'arim. There was curtains on the gates, and those did come from the Trumas Halishka. HaMenorah Oklei Shares, the menorah and the other service vessels, mitzvasan she'yavayu mimoser hanesachim. Those came from the funds that were there for the libations, and when there was an excess of those funds, that money went for the Klei Shares. Uvehilchos Klei Hamikdash va'ha'ovdim by Yibaser Mahu Moiser Hanesachim in Hilchos Klei Hamikdash v'ha'ovdim by. So
over there, I'm going to explain what it means.
Over there, he's going to explain this whole idea of the Moiser Nesachim, the excess that came from the libations. But if there wasn't any Moiser Nesachim, then it was brought from the Trumas Halishka. Big Day Kahuna, the linen clothing that was worn by the Kohanim, Bein Big Day Kohen Gadol, Bein Sha'ar Big Day Kol Kohanim, whether it was for the regular Kohen Hedyot, whether it was for the Kohen Gadol, Sha'avdim Bahem B'Mikdash, that they would use when they served in the Mikdash, that they would wear when they served in the Mikdash. Hakom Trumas Halishka, this was all purchased from the Trumas Halishka. By the way, we mentioned before Para Aduma, and I was thinking to myself, the story that we all know when they went to the Dawa Ben Esina to get the right, they gave him they were trying to get the stone for the Chayshen, right? And they offered him all this money. His father was sleeping. That whole story. So presumably those funds, if I'm understanding this correctly, came for the Trumas Halishka, right? And they offered him tons of money. And then in the end, he didn't do it. And his reward was he got a Para Aduma. And then they ended up buying the Para Aduma from him. So both of those would have been bought from these funds. Halacha Gimel. Kol habehemas and emtzais b'Yerushalayim. If you found an animal wandering in Yerushalayim, like chutzala b'karv mimena, or outside Yerushalayim but close to it, habois oilos, you would assume that this animal belonged to the Beis Hamikdash, and you would bring it for an oila. Kamashis bar b'psulei hamikdashim, like it's explained in the parak of psulei hamikdashim, is came ba mitrumas halishka, and their libations for those animals. Normally, when you bring a karban, you bring it with its nesachim, right? You're the owner; you have to bring the wine. But these, let's say, wandering animals, you're bringing it as a karban. Then the Beis Hamikdash would provide the libations for these animals from the trumas halishka. So too, a non-Jew that sent a carbon oila from another country, but he didn't send with it wine, or he didn't send it money to purchase wine. So you would bring the libations from the trumas halishka. Halacha daled. Ger shemeis v'niach zvachim. Let's just say there was so. Normally, the halacha is if a person dies and they have carbonis that have already been allocated to be brought. So that's my carbon chadas. That's my, well, I don't know about chadas might be different. But let's just say he has carbonis that have already been set aside. So the obligation falls on his yarshim to bring those carbonis. Okay. The Rambam is talking about in the case of a ger that has no yarshim, so he has no relatives. So what do? Ger shemeis v'niach zvachim im yesh lein nesachim. If he has libations, so kravim mishaloi, we take from his libations and we bring it with his carbon. If not, it's brought from the trumas halishka. Kohen gadol shemeis. In the case of a kohen gadol that passed away, they have not yet appointed his replacement. So makrivim es hachavitim mitrumas halishka. The chavitin, which was an offering that was brought by the Kohen Gadol every single day, and it was some sort of wafer, some sort of says like a pancake. Yeah, it was a special type of chavit, a special type of karban mincha that was brought by the Kohen Gadol every day. Which apparently was come from his own pocket. So in the case after he dies and they haven't replaced him yet, so they would bring chavitim, but it would come from the Trumas Halishka. Mevakri mumim shibushalayim. They had these experts that would inspect blemishes in Yerushalayim. And then there was the expert sheikhtim that would teach the kahanim how to do shchita. And they would teach them the halachas of kmitza. They had like a yeshiva where they had to learn it. Just because you're a kohen doesn't mean that you automatically know how to shech. So these guys, you had to pay them. The women who they designated their kids from birth, that they would be the ones to handle the paraduma, because paraduma had to be correct. It had to be handled by someone who never in their life was tamei. So in order to make sure that they had people like this, they would literally set aside kids from birth and had all sorts of.
They would live on a platform, so that way, even if someone's mace was passed
Shuki said they would live on a platform, and this way they would never. It's kind of like you put a veal in a box semach. So these were like little kids you had in the box, so that they would never become tamei from any what do you call it? Same idea maybe. I know it sounds kind of harsh, but there was a certain compensation.
Or me in yeshiva, but let's not go there.
Oh, is this on? Oh, okay. So this was so there was a compensation that was paid to their mothers and to these experts. And this kula neitin scharim and tumas halishka. It all came from the kama who and how much were they paid? He doesn't say it. We don't really know. It says kamoshi is she yifsiku lahen bezim, an amount decided by the court. Good luck trying to collect your wages based on that. But
to say, where'd the money go?
Exactly. Halacha hey, B'shnas hashmita she hefker. Well, but by the way, it kind of just goes back to the Gemara I mentioned with the spice makers and the lechem hapanim makers. They were charging exorbitant fees that they felt was too much. So they tried to take the business from them. But in the end, they had to come crawling back because no one else could do it. Halacha hey, b'shnas hashmita shehi hefker. in the year of Shemitah, when everything is hefker, so Seichrim based in Shemrim Sheyishmim Mixas Hasafichim Shetzamchu. So the Beis Din would appoint these watch guards to watch over a certain amount of the produce that was growing there, so that they would have barley and wheat to bring from that little field that they would be able to bring the carbon aimer and the shtei alechem. It could only be brought from Chodesh. And these guards, they would get paid from Trumas Halishka. Halacha Vav, Mishin is Da'adiv Lishma B'chinam, Ein Shemin Lai. So someone who volunteered to watch this produce for the Beis Hamikdash say, why are you paying that guy? I'll do it myself. Why do you have to hire Maganam? I'll be the security, right? So what does he say? Ein Shemin Lai. We don't listen to him. Gzeirim Mishim Bali Zroya Shema Yavayu B'yitla Mehen. This you don't listen. You don't listen to them. You have to hire paid watchmen, because if they're watching it for free, people will know that the guard is not being paid, and then they're going to come and they're going to chop it from them. Therefore, they decreed that these watchmen that were watching the wheat and the barley that was being grown for the Beis Hamikdash, this would make sure that anybody who is thinking of robbing this wheat and this barley would not do so, because they knew that they were paid watchmen. And obviously it's a much greater impediment when the people that are watching are being paid and they're professionals rather than doing it for free. Adkan Danny Fishman.
All right, halacha Zayin, Magiei Sefarim, Sheb Yerushalayim, people that would check Sifrei Torah and Sifrei Torah in Yerushalayim. We know that a person is not allowed to have in their home a Sifrei Torah that's unchecked, because it's an avla. It can cause very stumbling for someone else if they're going to use it, so they need to be checked. And Dayanin Shedanin Esagazlanim Yerushalayim, the judges that judge cases that have to do with stealing things in Yerushalayim, both of these people, they take their wages from the Trumas Halishka. They don't charge their clients, but it's a communal fund. And how much would these people take? So this wasn't determined by the Beis Din like we learned in Halacha Daled. Rather, they had a set amount. Tishim mana b'chal shana. They had 90 mana that was paid to them for every single year. They bring here in the footnote that a mana is 100 dinarim, and every dinar is 96 se'orim of silver. So if you do the math, it's 100 times 96 times 90 of barley corns of silver, and that's what they got paid. The imlo yispigul ahead, and if this amount was not enough, they had a large family. Even though they didn't want more money, we would add for them based on what they need, for him, for them, for the wives of Bnei and their children, based on their entire household. It's easily understood when it comes to Dayanim that they need to make sure they have enough, because we don't want them to be people that is more easily to bribe them with funds if they're not making enough money. So we need to make sure they have enough. Halacha Ches. They would build a ramp or a bridge from Har Bayis to the Har Mishcha, which on this bridge they would take out the Paraduma. And they would also make a bridge where that would go from the Azara all the way to outside of the city of Yerushalayim, where they would take out the Sar HaMishtaleach on Yom Kippur. So both of these bridges, both of them were taken from the extra funds that was in this chamber. And so to the Mizbeach, which is not included in the Kalim that we learned before, and the Ha'hechal and the Azara, all of these, they come from the extra funds of the Lishka. Next, there was a stream of water that went through Yerushalayim. We also know that this stream continued into the Azara, and Chaymas Yerushalayim, the walls of Yerushalayim, and all of its towers. and B'chol Tzarchei Ha'ir, and any other need that was connected to the city of Yerushalayim, like fixing its wells or fixing its streets and providing guards for the city, all of them, they come from the extra funds of the Lishka. So the needs of the city of Yerushalayim didn't come from taxes that were collected specifically from the people that lived in Yerushalayim, but it came from the funds that were collected from everyone from Machzah Shekel. And if a goy wanted to donate money for these things, or he wanted to volunteer to do these things for free, we don't accept it from him. We learned before that we do accept a carbon oila, but we don't accept for things that are connected to the city. Even if it's a gertoshav, a guy that accepted upon himself the Sheva Mitzvahs, like it says, it's not for you and for us to build, not for you meaning the non-Jews and for us the Jews. Rather, it says, for you there is no portion, and there is no tzedakah and a remembrance in the city of Yerushalayim. It's something that's designated specifically for the Yidden. Halacha test. Now, what happens if you spent all of the money for everything we said until now, from the Trumas Halishka and the Shiari Halishka, and there were still extra funds? So, Trumas Halishka, Shiari Halishka, any extra funds, we would buy male animals, and they would all be brought on the Mizbeach as a carbon oila. Because tonight, Bezdin, it's a condition that Bezdin made, and all of the extra money left over from these funds that they should be brought for carbon oila, and it doesn't necessarily have to be brought for a particular thing that people donated it for. However, they would not purchase birds that would be brought as a carbon oila. We don't find a communal offering that was brought from a bird, only from an animal. And these carbon oilers that were brought from extra funds, they are called kayitz l'mizbeach. Kayitz can either mean a dessert. They were the extra things that we brought to the mizbeach after people brought what they had to, or kayitz can mean like the summer months. In the summer months, there were less people bringing karbanis, so they needed extra karbanis to make sure the mizbeach was full. Halacha yud. Shekalim shlo yispiku lehem l'chol karbanis hatzibur. What happens if the reverse happens? What happens if there wasn't enough funds for the carbonates of the communities? They could take extra funds that they need from the bedek habayis, funds that were designated for the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash. But if let's say they needed something for the bedek habayis and there wasn't enough funds, they couldn't take it for the funds that was needed for the mizbeach, like we're saying right now, from the Machzah Shekel. You can only take from the bedek habayis for the Machzah Shekel. You can't take if you don't. If you don't have enough for the mizbeach, you can take it from the bedek habayis, but you can't do it in the reverse. Halach, seemingly because Ma'ilin HaChodesh, the funds that were used for the actual mizbeach, was more important than from bedek habayis, so you can't use those funds for the bedek habayis. Halacha Yud Aleph. Mishiagia Rosh Chodesh Nisan, from the time Rosh Chodesh Nisan came, which was the first time they took money from the Trumas Halishka, Aid Makriv and Karbanis Atzibur Element Truma Chadasha. They can only bring Karbanis of the community from new funds that were collected this year. But if let's say the new funds haven't reached yet, like we learned in previous prakim that they would send shluchim from every city to bring those funds. Let's say they didn't come yet. So then, you can still buy the karbanis from the old funds. Therefore, if Rosh Chodesh Nisan came, and they still have animals for the carbon tamid that was bought from last year's funds. So what should we do if you're supposed to bring the karbanis from the new funds? So poidin oisan, you redeem those animals onto money, and and those animals now become chulim. Even though these animals don't have a blemish, and generally we don't redeem animals that were designated for karbanis if it doesn't have a blemish, but these you can. And v'yiplu demei and the truma yeshana, that money you take and you designate it as the old truma that we learned before. They're going to buy other animals that with them they're going to bring as a carbon oila. Because it's tonight based on any animal that's bought for the carbon tamid, that if they're not going to need them, they're going to become chulin. And therefore, those animals became chulin, and that money was then brought for a carbon oila. And then they can take the new funds and buy new carbonates for the carbon tamid.
Just buy back those animals?
It doesn't say they buy back those animals because I don't know if this, I just don't know enough. Is it the same exact type of animal that you used for a
Carbon tumid and carbon oil, the same thing. Kevis or a sire for a carbon tumid.
I don't know if the
That
tumid,
was a female, and we said that the others are males.
oh, those are all males. They bought male animals.
Okay.
Now,
so
could be
that
they
makes
bought those back with the new truma, the same exact animals they bought back
You have to do a
for
photo
the
from
carbon
new
tummy,
money.
but I don't know if they can use it for the
sense.
carbon
Got it,
oil.
okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Halacha yud beis. Now, what happens? Same thing would apply to the keteras. What happens if they had extra keteras? And the keteras we learned before, we said the keteras and the people that made the keteras comes from the money of the maksah shekel.
Also, what's it called?
The carbon
Base
the
Aftinas.
The base aftinas were the ones in
Right.
charge of making the keteras. Okay.
Sure.
So if you had halacha yud beis, this is what you did if you had extra keteras. When Rosh Chodesh Nisan came, what you do is you pay this extra keteras as a payment to the experts. Knew the base aftinas, instead of getting paid in cash, they got paid keteras. And then I'm sorry. So they would give the actual keteras to the family. The money that they would have paid the base aftinas for their expertise, they had money designated for that. That was also money that came from the truma. So the money was easy. They bought animals that was going to be brought as a carbon oil, like we said before. That's what we always did. And then we take the money that we were going to give them as a reward, as a payment, the ketzim mizbech
The whole point
as
is
a
that
carbon
because
oil.
it was already purchased last year, you can't use it for this year, right? So they would give, now you have some leftover keteras, they would use that to pay them
Correct.
for making, that's now their wage. Now they have this keteras.
Now they have money. Now the family has keteras, and the Beis Hamikdash has money that they were going to pay them with. Initially, how do you pay that family? With money. But now it's Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and we want to figure out what to do with the extra keteras. So we pay the family the keteras.
Right.
The money that we were supposed to pay them with, we now use to buy carbonous oil, ketzam mizbeach. Okay, so the money is used for carbon oil, which we said before is what you do with the extra funds.
What money are you talking about?
The money that we would have paid this family, because we
Okay.
gave them the
Oh,
wages with the keteras.
Right.
We had
So if you have $100 worth of leftover spices, you owe them a wage of 100. You pay them with the spices, but then you have to take that money, you're saying, and buy
carbon oil, the money. Now, what about what? Very good. So that's what we did with the money. Now, what does that family do with the keteras? They don't need the keteras. They need to go to the mizbeach. Now, the experts take the extra keteras as their wage. Then the Beis Hamikdash will rebuy that keteras from that family from the new truma. So that way it comes from the new maksah shekel once Rosh Chodesh Nisan happens. And the im ein lahem truma chadasha, if they don't have yet funds from the new maksah shekel, maktir noisa b'truma yishana, we do bring the keteras using the funds from the old truma and sliku lahu hilchos shekalim. We're gonna return.
All right. Kiddush HaChodesh. Let's do it. Says the Rambam, Hilchos Kiddush HaChodesh, Hu mitzvos aseh achas, Hu lachashiv, to calculate the leda and to know v'likboa and to establish the Ezeh Yom Tchilas Kol Chodesh Mechadshei Hashana, on which day is the first day of the month for every year. Says the Rambam, Halacha Aleph, Chodshei Hashana Hem Chodshei Halavana. Our months are lunar months. Shenemar Olas Chodesh Bechodsho, as it says, the new month, every month in its month. V'nemar HaChodesh V'zeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. What's the drasha? Kach Amar Chachamim Hera Lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu LaMoshe B'Mara HaNevuah D'Mus Levana. Hashem showed Moshe in a prophecy the appearance of the moon. V'Amar Lo Kazeh Re'eh V'Kadesh. Like this, see it and be Mekadesh the new month. So in other words, the pasuk says, HaChodesh hazeh lochem, and hazeh is the lashon of the I'm pointing at it. Gemara Menachos says there are three things that Moshe Rabbeinu was confused about until Hashem said zeh. What are they? Menorah, Chodesh, and Shratzim. The Yesh Omrim, even Hilchos Shchita, that Hashem had to show him, and each of those has a pasuk that it says zeh.
Interesting that he showed him the Mari and a It's not like he actually showed him the moon.
Correct. Interesting that he didn't show him the actual moon. He showed him a prophecy version of a moon. But by contrast to our months, our years that we calculate are solar years. Watch and keep the Chodesh of in the spring, which is mashma. You have to make sure that it stays in the springtime, and that's why we calculate solar years, even though we calculate lunar months. How do we reconcile the two? Here we go. Halacha beis. The Kama Yisera.
What does that mean? You count solar year?
We say that the first day of the year has to happen every time at the same solar point in the calendar, rather than the same lunar months times 12. No, it's based on the solar year. That's how we calculate our years.
So the 12 months altogether, we want that to follow the solar year.
Correct. So we want to shtup our 12 lunar months into one solar year. So how do you do it? Halacha beis. V'kama yisei shnas hachama al shnas halavana. Karov me'echad asar yom. A solar year is approximately 11 days longer than a lunar year, 354 versus 365. So there's 11 days difference. So a solar year keeps, in the lashon of the Rambam, 11 extra days. Lefika, kishi yiskabit, when the collect, Midat Tosefah says those from these extra 11 days, kemo shloshim yom o pachos ma'at o yoser ma'at. When that 11 days accumulates and reaches approximately 30 days. In other words, the first time you go, it's going to be 11, and then it's going to be 22, and then it's going to be 33. That's the critical point. That's where you're going to add an extra month. After that, the next time around, it might be 31. The next time around, it might be 28. But the Rambam here is just giving the overview in a broad sense. It's approximately 11. When it gets to approximately 30, that's when we're going to add a new month. You add a month, and you make that year 13 lunar months. That's called a Mu'ubar year, a pregnant year, a full year, a overstuffed year. That's the year that has 13 months. Why can't you just say, okay, so just do 11 days, hang out for 11 days, and then start Rosh Chodesh on day 12, so start the new year? No, we can't do that. Shenamar lechodshei hashana, to the months of the year, and the drasha is chadashim atamona l'shana. The iatamona yamim, we count months towards the year. We don't count days towards the year. So you can't have an 11 days hanging by itself. You have to complete months, and that's the only way to do it. Halacha Gimel. Halavana nisteres b'chol chodesh. Every month the moon disappears. The eino nearest, and you can't see it. Kamo shnei yamim o pachos o yoser ma'at. Approximately 2 days, a little bit more, a little bit less. It varies from month to month. The Gemara describes it being one 24-hour period. It's not a stira. The idea is that this is, again, the Rambam is approximating, and he's describing how there's about a 2-day period every month where you literally can't see the moon at all. Approximately 1 day before it is perfectly aligned with the sun, such that it's turning into the new month. And then after that 48-hour period, 1 day prior to the new month, 1 day after the new month, after it's perfectly aligned with the sun, and then you start to be able to see it in the west in the evening. The night that you're able to see it in the west after it disappeared, that's called the beginning of the month. So that's day 0 or day 1. You count from there 29 days. If you see the moon on the night of the 30th night after you last saw the moon, then that 30th night becomes the first of the new month. That becomes the Rosh Chodesh, meaning to say that it's not the 30th day, but it's Aleph of the next month. And if you don't see it, then Rosh Chodesh will be on the 31st day, since you last saw it. Yom Shloshim Mechodesh Shavar, and then that day, that's day 30, is going to be the 30th day of the prior month, the Ein period. We don't have to check out and look and see if we can find the moon on the 31st night. Bein Shenira, Bein Shalonira, whether you can see it or not, doesn't matter. You don't have a month that's longer than 30 days. So by definition, if it reaches day 31 and you didn't see it last night, you know, boom, it's already the new month. Chodesh Sheyiyeh Tisha V'Esrim. So let's do some terminology. A 29-day month. V'yira Yareach B'Leil Shloshim Nikra Chodesh Chaser. That's called a Chaser month. It's called a month that has less or missing because it only has 29 days. V'yim Lo Yira Yareach. And if the moon is not seen, V'yiyeh Chodesh Sha'avar Shaloshim Yom. And it's a full 30-day month. Nikra Chodesh Me'ubar. That's called a Me'ubar, a pregnant, a full, stuffed month. V'nikra Chodesh Mole, or full, right? This is the terminology. V'yoreach she'yira b'leil shloshim yom, hu ha'nikra yoreach she'yira bizmano. When you see the moon on the 30th day, that's what we're going to call seeing the moon bizman. V'yamnira b'leil echad v'shloshim. If you don't see it until the 31st, v'lo nira b'leil shloshim, and you don't see it on the 30th, hu nikra yoreach she'nira b'leil iburo. That's considered, that's called seeing the moon on the night of its ibur, of its pregnancy. The idea is not about everybody can have their opportunity to go out and see the moon and say, oh, today's the first of the month, like we have by Shabbos Bereshis. In other words, by Bereshis, by the week, everybody can figure out for themselves, count 6 days, Shabbos, count 6 days, Shabbos. By the Levana, it's not like that. You don't count 29 days, see the moon, okay, it's Rosh Chodesh. No. Elo labesin adavar masar. The thing is given over, the calculations and the declarations were given over to Beis-Din. Achi kadshu Beis-Din, until Beis-Din is mekadosh the new month. V'yikbu also ayom Rosh Chodesh hu sheyeh Rosh Chodesh. And their Beis-Din is kovei that today is the Rosh Chodesh. That's what makes that day Rosh Chodesh. Shenemar HaChodesh hazeh lachem. The pasuk says these months are for you. Eidus zu tiyeh mesur lachem. And this pasuk was talking to Moshe and Aaron, and so we learn out just like it's lachem. The word lachem is technically extra. It's saying people who are like you or in your place, leaders of the generation. So that's why it's not just about anybody, but it's about people who are like Moshe and Aaron. That's lachem that it was given over to. And nowadays are Moshe and Aaron, not nowadays, but after Moshe and Aaron, it's Beis-Din because they're the leaders of the generation. So it's up to them and not to everyone else. Allah above.
I'm understanding like the Shabbos Bereshis, like there could be a scenario where it'll live in on your camp. If you go to a desert and you don't know what it is.
So I was wondering about that. If that's what the Rambam was talking. The Rambam was talking about a situation where you go to the desert and you don't know what day it is. So then you have on your own calculate. But I would think that if you're in the desert on your own and you know that it's Nisan, that you need to. I guess right. If you see the even if you see the moon, you're in the desert and you see the new moon. You can't say, oh, it's the Aleph Nisan, only keep one day of Pesach 2 weeks later. You have to say, I don't know, I have to keep 2 days.
Yeah, correct.
Right? Because it's not on you to declare, oh, I saw the moon, it's Rosh Chodesh. Very good.
Yeah, the emphasis is that he has to go to the Beis-Din.
You, correct. The person by themselves doesn't have the power to say, I see the moon, therefore for me, it's Aleph today. No, you don't get to do that. Right? But in other words, if you wake up in the desert, you say, for me, it's Sunday.
Right.
It doesn't matter what other people are doing. You can't make that cheshbon with Rosh Chodesh. Halacha hey, halacha vav. Beis-Din mechashven becheshbonos. Beis-Din has to calculate the cheshbonos b'derech shemachashim ha'etztagninim, like the astrologers are able to calculate. Sheyodin mekomos hakochavim, they know the places of the stars, u'mahalachem and their paths. The chokrim u'medaktikim, and they calculate and they exact and they measure. Ad sheyedu im efshur sheyira hayareach bezmano she'olelo shloshim o efshur. So in order to reach the conclusion as to whether or not it's going to be possible for for somebody to see the moon on this 30th night. In other words, you have to know, based on the molad and based on how many days into the month it's been, whether or not tonight that sliver could be, is it really more than 24 hours after they're perfectly aligned with the sun, or is it not? Why? Because you actually practically make a difference. If their calculation concludes that it's possible to see the moon, then they sit and they wait eagerly all day for Eidim to come and testify that they saw the new moon. And if Eidim come, the drashim and the drishas and the chakiras, they check them out and make sure they're telling the truth. And their testimony is accepted, they're believed. Then Mekachin also they make the declaration that it's the new month. And if they're waiting all day and nobody comes, below bo edim, then mashlimim shloshim chodesh me'uber. Then they it goes into the evening. They say, okay, we completed 30 days. That was a me'uber month, and only tonight starts Rosh Chodesh. But if they know in their calculation that it's not possible to be seeing the new moon on the 30th night, then they don't have to sit all day. They don't eagerly sit awaiting the arrival of Edim, and not only that, they know for sure that Edi Sheker, or not that they were Edi Sheker, but that they maybe saw something in a cloud and it was a reflection, and maybe it was a premiere, so somebody was beaming lights up in the sky, and that's what they saw, and they got confused, but they obviously didn't see the full moon, because based on Beis Din's own calculation, that it has to be accurate enough for them to be relying on in these kind of situations, they know that it cannot be that these Eidim are talking about the real new moon. Halacha Zayin.
So I have one question. So,
Yes.
So how do they know astronomy?
How do they know astronomy?
Yeah.
You have to calculate. You have to learn. You have to learn about it. I mean, so there's some of it that was Halacha Moshe Sinai.
Okay.
There's some of it that the Rambam is basing his knowledge on in later chapters. It's based on Greek mathematics. I mean, these are knowledge. There's things. I mean, the way it works is that if you observe the sun in one place, and you observe the sun in the same place the next day, and you observe the moon in one place, and you observe the moon in the same place the next month, after a while, you keep the data, and you're able to know, you're able to predict based on where it was 2 months ago and last month, where it's going to be this month.
So they had, if you want to say, maybe some sort of a calendar that they were expecting.
It's not a calendar in the sense of like when the months are, but it's lunar times. It's
The month,
space
and they're like,
times,
We know 30 days from now is supposed to be this,
right?
right? So let's calculate. So they had the calendar at least for 30 days.
Right. Well, so every month is 29 and a half days, meaning to say that the new moon will appear 29 and a half days, give or take, not 0.5, but it's approximately 29 and a half days after it appeared last time. So if last time it appeared not on the night of the 30th, but in the morning of the 30th,
Mhm.
then 29 and a half days later is only going to be the night of the 31st. Right? In other words, it shows up at night on the 30th. The next month it shows up in the morning of the 30th. The next month it shows up at the night of the 31st. So then you push a day. Now it's back to the night of it's the 30th because it's the last day of the last month. 29 and a half days later, it's going to be in the evening, it's going to be in the morning of the day. And then the next month is going to be the night. So you know, based on where it was every month, approximately where it's going to be. That's not even a very complicated calculation. I mean, really, Beis Din has to be making much more complicated calculations about the location of the sun, location of the moon, as we'll see in later chapters. But on a basic level, they have to know whether or not it's possible that the moon showed up last night, which requires it's astronomy, but it's basic astronomy. It's not that complicated. You're not trying to figure out. The Rambam is telling you right, correct, that typically speaking, the moon appears first. The new moon appears first in the west. It has to do with the rotation and the direction of where the sun is and where the moon is. That when the moon.
Yeah, that's what he says.
Well, this was interconnected. This was done in Eretz Yisrael.
Right.
So let's say that for Eretz Yisrael, that's what it is. I'm not sure if it's like that for everywhere in the world.
The stuff is scary. The stuff is scary enough without that T-shirt.
Well, I was thinking that a wolf howls at the moon, so I figured it was an appropriate one for Kiddush.
There you go. I like it.
Halacha Zayin. Mitzvah saseh min haTorah al Beis Din sheyachashu v'yadu im yira yireach o lo yira. It's a mitzvah saseh of Beis Din. It's part of this mitzvah of HaChodesh v'Zalachem Rosh Chodashim for Beis Din to do these calculations, because Beis Din has to be able to figure out if it's going to be possible to see or not on the 30th, because that's helping them ask the witnesses the questions they need to ask them. That's also a mitzvah. And it's also a mitzvah for Beis Din to send out and let everybody know that either they were Mekadesh or they weren't Mekadesh, so that everybody can know when the Moados are. At which you will call them Mikrai Kodesh, so the mitzvah on you to call the Moados Kodesh. What do you mean, you the Moados? You don't say when Pesach is. Yes, you do, because we declare when the new month is, which necessarily tells you when Pesach is. And you need to watch these times in their proper time, which again is telling us that we have a mitzvah on us to make sure that they stay in their proper times, which includes being Mekadesh the new month and being Ma'aber the Shana. Halacha Ches. Ein mechashvin v'kovin chadashim ma'arbim shanim elo be'eretz Yisrael. We only do these calculations and sitting and making the declarations of Rosh Chodesh in Eretz Yisrael. Shenemar ki mitzion teitzei Torah, from Zion comes out the Torah, or the Devar Hashem in Yerushalayim, and the Devar Hashem comes out from Yerushalayim. What do you mean the Devar Hashem comes out from Yerushalayim? The Devar Hashem comes from Shemayim? No, from Yerushalayim, that's given over to us is coming out of Yerushalayim. Oh, exceptions. The Gadol Hadar, the Nismach, Be'eretz Yisrael. He was in Eretz Yisrael. The Yato l'chutz la'aretz. He went out on a fundraising trip. V'lo hiniach be'eretz Yisrael kamos. And there wasn't left in Eretz Yisrael anybody like him to be mekadosh the Chodesh in the right place. So then harezeh mechashiv v'koveh chadashim u'ma'aber shana mechutz la'aretz. He can do those things. He can be mekadosh the new month.
The nismach means he received smicha, not that he's close, which is really the same.
He received the smicha that we had at some point. So if he's the one to do it, and there's not anybody in Eretz Yisrael, then he can do it even if he's outside. But if it's known to him that there's in Eretz Yisrael somebody else like him who can do it, and obviously if there's somebody in Eretz Yisrael who's greater than him, in other words, even if he's the Av Beis Din when he's in Eretz Yisrael, but if he's not the Gadol Hador, and he leaves, then he knows that there's a Gadol Hador back in Eretz Yisrael to do it. Then Hariza also the Kabbalah will Aber b'chutz la'aretz, it's also to do it. V'im avar, and if he was over that B'kava and he did it anyway, the Iber, and he was established in a month or a new year, lo also klum, he didn't do anything that doesn't count. And that's the end of Perek Aleph.
A Gadol Hadar, FYI, is considered someone that the community accepts upon them as their Gadol. So halachically, when we say Gadol Hadar, it's a halacha in Choshen Mishpat that it's someone that's accepted by the community, like Tuvei Ha'ir or Gadol Hadar or Mumcha. All these things are accepted by the community, and then he retains a stature as if he's the Dayan, well, not exactly, but the Dayan that has the Smicha Ishmi.
Those of us that just learned Yevamos, who's brought them Yevamos, that Rabbi Akiva was in Bavel, and he was establishing the new month.
The Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva was establishing the new month in Bavel.
He was, and it's Bataver, because he was the Gadol Hadar.
Because he was the Gadol Hadar, so the Rambam is probably, at least partially, coming from that Gemara in Yevamos, is saying that if he's the Gadol Hadar, even if he's outside, he should do it outside.
Anyone that the community accepts upon themselves would be considered a Gadol Hadar. And then there's a machlokes whether he could implement something new, or something that was established from years ago, and he's just ensuring that they continue the tradition.
Sorry, we couldn't hear you, Samach. What was the last thing you said?
A Gadol Hadar, it can either ensure that only tradition, according to the Rambam, that only the traditions that were implemented years ago, the Gadol Hadar ensures that it has continuation. Or do we say that a Gadol Hadar, according to the Mechaber, if the community accepts him, then he has the ability to enact new regulations. But over here, we're talking about Kiddush HaChodesh, so that's what we're discussing. It's time, just bringing it in.
All right. All right, Perek Beis. By the way, Kayvon, you said the connection's bad. Can everybody hear okay?
It's fine, but it goes on and off once in a while.
Is everybody hearing that? Or is it? No?
I'm clear.
Zajac is clear?
Yep.
Then it's a personal problem, sorry.
Aaron, you can hear okay?
I got my little conference call thingy here.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Perek Beis. Sorry, Kayvon. I don't know if we can do anything about it.
That's good, thank you.
Okay. You can walk over, be here like in 2 minutes. No? Okay, Perek Beis. Ein kasher le'edus HaChodesh ela shnei anashim ksherim haruim le'ha'id v'chol davar v'davar. The only type of people who are kosher to do edus, to do testimony of the new moon, are two people who are kosher and appropriate to testify in all matters. Aval nashim ve'avadim. However, if you're dealing with women or servants, harehen kisheret psulei edus, they are like other unacceptable witnesses, and they cannot do testimony. Av uvnoi sherau es hayureh. How about a father and a son who see the yareach, they see the moon, yelchu lebeis din laha'id, they come to testify for the of the new moon. It's not because testimony of relatives is okay to testify for the new moon. Rather, if you find that one of these, the father or the son, are going to be puzzled because they're a thief or because of some other reason, when they're coming to check who they are, then then you can join the one who is kosher with another kosher aid, and they can give testimony. Whatever is disqualified for edus according to the rabbis. What does rabbis mean? Meaning they're puzzle because they're gamblers or they are charging interest. That would be according to the Rabbanim. If they were puzzled this way, even though these edim are kosher according to the Torah, not according to the rabbis, puzzle edus HaChodesh, they still puzzle the edus. Okay, halacha base. Din Torah, according to the Torah, she'ein medaktikin be'edus HaChodesh. There's no need to be very precise about edus on the month. Afilu kichus HaChodesh al pi edim. Even if the new moon was sanctified on the basis of these edim, and it was later discovered that these people who came to do testimony themselves were edim zemimim. They were false witnesses. Then you still are sanctifying the month. Therefore, in the early times, they would accept edus for the month, for the new moon, from any Jew that was a Jew. Why? Because every Jew has a presumption that they are kosher. Until somebody comes with certainty and they say that this person is puzzle.
Until it becomes known to be.
Yeah, until it becomes known. Yeah, I guess it comes out that they are puzzle. Okay, until then they're kosher. Okay. Now, when the minim came, who were the minim? These were the tzaddik and baisos. When these followers came, and their whole purpose was that they wanted to mess with the oral Torah. They wanted to come and say, we'll believe the Torah, but we will not believe the oral Torah. And they believed that the oral Torah was human invention, and they wanted to just mess with it, and therefore they came to show that the real Torah is not, the oral Torah doesn't stand, okay? When they came, what does this mean? They would hire people to testify that the new moon was in fact there, and they didn't see it. Then the court, when they saw that this trickery was happening, they decreed that it would only be accepted from witnesses who the court established as being kosher. And they would do examination and they would do questioning about their testimony. If the court didn't know that the witnesses who saw the moon, they would send other witnesses together with the witnesses who came, who saw the moon, and to substantiate their what they saw, to see if they're kosher. And only after they sent these other shluchim to go with them, they would accept them as edim.
The city of the where the Edom lived,
yeah,
would send along with the Edom who saw the moon other Edom.
Yes.
To Beis. So it'd be like
yes.
Secondary Edom.
Yes.
See the first.
Yes, to substantiate the first.
Is good. Is legit.
Yeah.
Oh. And I'm guessing the second pair of witnesses have to be people that were trusted by Beis.
Makes sense.
Probably.
Otherwise, you'd have the same problem.
Have two people behind them, two people behind them.
Right. Allah Chadalad. Beisin mechashvin b'drachim beitz tanganin mechashvin bahem. So the court would make calculations, like Shuki said in the previous parak. They would make calculations according to astronomy. They would know when the approximate time when the moon would be positioned, whether it would be on the north or to the south, or the crescent of the moon would be wide or it would be narrow, and the direction in which the corners would be pointed, for the corner of the moon, which way it would be pointed. When these witnesses would come to testify, we would test them, we would examine them. Where did you see the moon? Did you see it in the south, in the north, or did you see it in the south? In which direction did the corners point? Did it point this way or that? How high and how wide did you see it? How wide was it? If it fit what they said according to what was calculated by the astronomers, right? They used astronomy. Then you accept it. And if it didn't fit with astronomy, according to the calculation that the Beis Din already made, then you do not accept it. Halacha hey. Amra idin, rinuhu b'mayim or be'avim or be'ashashis. If a witness comes and he says, I saw it as a reflection in the water. I saw it in the forms of the clouds, behind the clouds. I saw it as a reflection in a mirror. Or shira'u miktsaso b'rikia or miktsaso be'avim. Or I saw it as a portion in the heavens, a portion of it in the clouds, or b'mayim, or I saw it in the water, or b'ashashis, or in a reflection in a mirror. Ein zariya. This is not called seeing. The ein mekadshin al riya zois. We do not sanctify the moon according to this type of seeing. Amar echad re'isiv gavoya be'enei kamosh dei kamosh. If a person comes and he says, I saw it, and it appeared to me to be approximately 2 stories high. Amar hasheni kamosh shloish kamosh haya gavoya. And then a second aide comes and he says, I saw it to be 3 stories high, mitzarfin. Then we join those 2 eidim together, even though they are off in their calculation or their estimation by 1 story. Okay. Amar ha'echad k'moy shloish k'mois. If one person comes and says, I saw it at 3 stories high. L'asheni omer k'moy chamesh k'mois. And the second one comes and says, not 3, but I saw it at 5 stories high. Aim mitzarfin. We do not join them together. Why? Because they're not just close by 1. They're off by 2 stories. If either one of them may join with another witness who gives identical testimony, or involving a discrepancy of just 1 story.
Meaning they're not false witnesses, they just can't combine together. The testimony doesn't.
Right. These 2 witnesses are not false, as Rabbi Mendel says, but they're not close enough to be able to say that they saw the same thing.
Good.
Amru, what if the witnesses come and they say, Rinuhu beloy chavana. We saw the moon, but we didn't have chavana, meaning we were not going out in the intention to go see the moon. We happened to see it. Okay. And afterwards, when we did concentrate our attention, meaning we had kavana to come and see the moon to be able to testify, we didn't see it. This is not considered idus. You can't take the first one that was seen without kavana. You cannot mikadash it. Shema yavim avim niskashru v'niru kalavana. Maybe the 2 clouds came together and it looked like the moon. Yeah. Okay. Amru edim renuhu b'yem tisha v'esrim shachris b'mizrach kodim shetali hashemesh. If the witnesses came and they say, we saw the moon on the 29th day, during the day, in the morning, in the east, before sunrise, v'yenuhu arvis b'mayrev Beleil Shloishim, and then we saw it on the west on the 30th night. You can believe them. Umikachin al riyazu, and we're mekadesh the moon according to this seeing shariru bismanu, because they actually saw it in the time. Aval hariyah sha'amru sharu b'shachris, but if they say they saw it in the morning, in zkakim la, we do not count this. She'ein anu achrayin l'riyas shachris, because we do not pay attention to a sighting that is done during the morning or during the day. And it could have been the conjunction of the clouds, bringing two clouds together, and it looks as if it was the moon. So too, if the witnesses say they have seen the moon at its time, but it was not seen on the 31st night, these ones can be trusted. Because we only consider it significant if we see the moon on the 30th night. How do we make edus on the month, on the moon? How is it accepted? Anyone who came and said they saw the moon and is fit to Shara Esirech, Baal the basin, he comes to the basin, Machnisin Oisan Kulun Makum Echad, he brings all of these Eidim into one place. Oisin Lahen Seudas Gedolas, they make a big Seuda. Why do they make a big Seuda? Kadesh Yu Ha'am Regilim Lavoi, because they wanted a lot of people to come to give testimony. So I said, we'll give you some food to eat. Huh? Yeah, exactly. The Zug Sheba Rishon, the first one, Zug Sheba Rishon, the first couple who came, the first two Eidim that came together, we first test the first one privately with the testing that we spoke about. We ask the one who is Gadol, the one who is more knowledgeable, and we ask him questions. If the questioning fits with the cheshbon, what cheshbon are we talking about? The cheshbon of the astronomy that we had before. If it fits with that astronomy, right? Then we bring his chaver, we bring his partner. If we see that his partner is fitting with what his other partner says, idus on kayames, then their idus is kayam, ushar kol hazugois, and all the other edim that came. Now you don't need them anymore. What do you do with them? We ask them in a broader nature. We do not just send them away disheartened, in order that they should be accustomed to come. So you give a little bit of a.
Oh no! Where did you see the moon? Where did you see the moon?
Right. You make them feel good that they came, so they don't feel like they wasted their time.
Right.
After we did this, after you substantiated the edus, the head of the Beis comes and he says, "It's like by a wedding, right?
By a wedding, very good.
Yeah, mekudash, yeah." And the other ones come and they say, "It has been sanctified. It has been sanctified." The only way you are makadesh the yereach is through shleisha. You can only calculate according to 3. And the moon is only sanctified when it is sighted at its appropriate time. What did I underline here? It says the moon must be sighted on the 30th night. The witnesses must testify on the 30th day, and the court must declare the month to be sanctified all before sunset of that day. Okay?
If it's on the 31st, it sounds like they don't.
Correct. We're going to get there. Right? Okay. If they were sanctified and they said mekudash at night, doesn't work.
Which night? The night before?
The night before.
The afilu reuhu based in b'chol Yisrael. Even if the whole court and the entire Jewish people saw the moon, amru based in mekudash ad shechashad leil echad ushloishim, and they didn't say the word mekudash until it was after the 31st day. If they didn't say before the 31st day, or shen nechkeru ha'edim v'loy hispiku based in loymar mekudash ad Chashecha Leil Echad Shloishim, and they
They ran out of time.
And they ran out of time. They didn't say Mikudash because they were questioning them. Ein Mikash Noiser, we do not Mikadosh the month. The HaChodesh Me'ubar, and we consider that month to be called Me'ubar, full, pregnant, full. Because despite the fact that the moon was sighted on the 30th night, it is the 31st day that will be Rosh Chodesh, even though it was on the 30th day. The sanctification of the moon is not established by sighting of the moon. It is the basing that makes it mekudash by saying these words mekudash. Okay. What if the court themselves, the basing themselves, see the new moon at the conclusion of the 29th day? Huh? Sorry. Im adayin lo yatsa koicha b'leil shloishim. Based in Amru mekudash adayin yom hu. Sorry, I'm lost. Ra'u based in Atzman b'soif yom tisha v'esrin. If the court saw it on the 29th, before
now we're talking about seeing it before this man,
before the 30th,
when it's normally seen on the night of the 30th. Now we're
right?
talking about 5 hours before then.
Yeah.
It's the afternoon, and basing themselves see the new moon.
And before a star has emerged, meaning before it became nighttime on the 30th night, they saw it on the afternoon, you're saying?
Of the 29th.
Of the 29th. Okay. Based in Omer Mekudash, Adain Yom Hu, they can say it's Mekudash because it's still day. They want to chop that day to be able to say Mekudash. If they saw it on the 30th day, after 2 stars came out, no?
I think that all this halacha is saying, not talking about seeing it early, it's just saying that in the case where the Beis Din themselves were the agent. That's what it's telling us.
That's what the about
right?
Talk about.
And it's saying that whatever, and so it's basically saying if they start at the right time,
Let's finish here.
they make it. If not, not.
Okay, so now they saw it on the 30th after the 2 stars came out, meaning now they're on the night of the 30th. So they said it on the 29th by day, they said Mekudash, because it was daytime, they wanted to chop a Mekudash into it. Then they saw on the night after 2 stars come out, so it's definitely nighttime.
What is this in 2 stars?
I guess that's
Isn't it usually 3 stars?
yeah, I don't know. And now they actually see it. So these 2 dayanim, these 2 judges, they join one other with them in the court. You take these 2
So you take
with the shloisha.
2 of them come around the table, and you have to put 2 new judges in their place.
2 other judges join one of the 3 from a court. From a court,
Right, that's right.
right? Now they come and they sanctify it on the 30th. So they're not sanctifying it on the 29th, even though it was day. They happened to see it, but now they saw it again at night, like you're supposed to look at night.
Those are 2 different cases.
2 different cases. In the first case, they said Mekudash on the 29th. I don't think the 29th.
The 29th is not a
No,
Chodesh.
it's about to start.
They declare Rosh Chodesh before it even starts.
That's what it sounds like.
Right, but that's not okay. That's not okay.
By daytime.
By day.
No, it is okay.
Because
It
they
is okay.
saw
But
it
it's not that day
right,
that becomes sacred.
right
No,
before
they're
nighttime.
sanctifying the upcoming
Still
night.
called
Got it.
day,
Yes.
they can be
So-
Mekudesh, called Mekudesh.
But does that mean that they're Mekudesh without this process of 2 people testifying?
Correct, they are the ones.
Yes.
They're the
But
basics.
he's saying if they see it at night, if they see it during a session,
Because they don't have
they're
time.
sitting in their momish in basin, and it's in the afternoon, and they see the month, they can just say, "Oh, you see the month? There it is. Boom, Mekudesh."
Yeah.
But if they
But
don't
it's-
see it until the night, then they can't just come in the morning and
But-
say Mekudesh, we saw it last night. They have to stand up to witnesses and have 3 sitting down and do the testimony, do Shechira.
Which
And
is
then they-
connected to the previous halacha that you have to have only with 3.
Right.
By the way, here it says why 2. It just says here that 2 is a suffix. It says like 3 we know that's when it's Laila Vadai, suffix. And when it comes to we're gonna be machmir in these halachas and we're gonna
It's
consider
too late
already
to-
the suffix. Yeah.
Halacha Yud, the final halacha. Based in Shekichu es HaChodesh, if the Beis Din comes to sanctify the new man, bein shegigim, bein mut'in, bein anusin, whether they sanctified it under by accident, yeah, or they sanctified it when when they were led astray, meaning by false witnesses, or they they sanctified it by force, this becomes sanctified. And we have to calculate the holidays according to this sanctification that happened, even if it was forced or under Edom Zomimin or by accident. Even though we know that this basting came, or this sanctification was a mistake, we have to count on it, because this concept was placed upon this basting to do. The one who commanded us, Hashem, who commanded us to observe the Moyadois, also commanded us to be lismayach on the basting who sanctified it, which you will pronounce as a day of holy convocation. Have a great day. And it's 7:59. 1 minute to spare.
Thank you. Great job.
Okay.